It's like a textbook.
For the seerah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is. It's a textbook. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
So those who really want to get into it, then you've got that, and I'm going to give you other references as well, that you, depending on what level you want to go. We're just going to, move everyone along. Whoever
Sure.
wants to get deep into it or just kind of come along for the ride, with barakah, that's totally up to the person's discretion and choice.
Oh, I'm changing the caption.
So we're ready to roll? I'm live yet or not?
Yes, you are.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidil mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahabati ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Subhanaka la fahma lana illa ma fahamtana innaka antal jawadul karim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna bi fadlika wa karamika 'ilman wa 'amala. Allahumma ameen. Amma ba'd. So alhamdulillah, we're continuing our second halaqah of our character building, and as we titled it, Building Beautiful Character and Dismantling Ugly Behavior. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and all of us tawfiq. So, just this is not working. Okay. So, before we start our second halaqah, why don't we just go back to the beginning and just run real quickly through what we've already gone through. And so, number one, we always want to start with our intention, for me and for all of us, because we have to prepare our minds and our hearts. This is ilm from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He looks to the mind and the heart. He looks to the heart. If it's receptive, then He places His nur in that heart. And so let's make our hearts and minds receptive. Tawajjuh ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're here, we have an intention to acquire beneficial knowledge. Beneficial knowledge meaning knowledge which will facilitate us to act, will facilitate us to live the life of ubudiyah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to live. And again, I'll remind everyone to focus and remove things that are going to distract our focus, particularly phones and gadgets. Make sure phones are out of mind and out of sight, on silent, off, better yet. And what is our objective? We want to change our character. We want to acquire the character of our Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. That's what we're into. And so we talked about the character of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and the mention of good character in the Holy Quran. Okay, we mentioned the number of ayats and the number of ahadith. And we mentioned that character is actually a shape, right? It's an entity within us that we build, and it has some, the beginnings. We'll learn about that today. That there's something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed there by default, and there's a building process that we actually go through, and that very significantly, just to remind us that the body is made of clay. The soul is min amri rabbi, so it's connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The body is connected to the earth. It will go back to that. It came from it. It will go back to that. Soul is connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so its direction is up, whereas the direction of the body is down. So we're turning our attention a little bit away from our bodies, although bodies are very significant. At another time we'll talk about that significance when we talk about physical health in Islamic perspective, in another setting, which this is not. So just let us keep in mind that here we're focused on perfecting our ruh. Character is connected to ruh. Okay? So we also mentioned that can character be changed? Yes, character can be changed, and that we are not here to destroy our human nature. We are here to develop and perfect our human nature. So we talked about, the concept of balance of nature. We want to eat, we want to, we have lower desires, for the continuation of the species. This is natural, and we also have the feeling of anger. We have other emotions. So those emotions were placed there for a purpose. So we don't want them to define us or overpower us or control us, but we want to moreover control them and modify them and refine them so that they serve us and they don't destroy us. Okay? So we talked about homework. We gave a homework assignment. So perhaps Brother Asad has looked into that homework assignment. Brother Ubaid. What was the homework assignment? How do we achieve balance? So did anybody actually think about that or consider that?
Yeah, I have written down.
Yeah. What'd you come up
I
with?
said mindfulness, daily habits, knowledge, and things in moderation. Learning from the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him,
MashaAllah.
and modeling after his character.
MashaAllah. This is a student, you see. He does his homework, he does some mutala, right? So, as I said, I probably somewhere in the course last time, that this course is, for every level. We're going to have people that just come and just for barakah and وَلَا يَخْرُ مِنْ بَرَكَةٍ inshallah. Just sitting in the majlis of ilm and majlis of dhikrullah, it has its own barakah and khair and impact. And then, what you put into it, you get out. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees who's going to put more into it and who wants to get deeper. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the ayat says, وَصَالَتْ أَوْدِيَةٌ بِقَدْرِهَا. صَالَتْ أَوْدِيَةٌ بِقَدْرِهَا. Every valley flows when the rains come down. They flow according to the volume that they can hold. So, Jazakumullah khair. You want to repeat that one time? Again?
Sure,
Yeah.
I
So, to get this balance, you were saying what?
I said mindfulness.
Be mindful, to be focused. Yeah, we're going to have to be focused on balancing. Yeah.
And then I said daily habits.
Daily habits.
Increasing knowledge, having the knowledge.
Exactly. We're going to have to get knowledge how to balance. Yeah, absolutely.
And then doing things in moderation.
Doing things in moderation, yeah. That's the whole idea. Okay, great. Anybody else has something? Yeah?
This is kind of cheating because you are the one who gave us this answer already.
Yeah.
But how you had us give our list in order of kind of proximity of our responsibilities and our roles. And that, I feel, really helped me understand how to balance everything.
Balancing of roles. Yeah, that's another issue. So that is a related issue. It's not exactly what we're talking about here, but what we're talking about is balancing our emotions. Like anger, If we totally suppress it, that's not good. If we totally let it loose, that's also not good. So, right? So balancing roles, so balancing the emotions that we have, and balancing, these characteristics of our character. Okay, so let's jump into this next clause. And Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, number one, we have a thing called fitrah. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created man with this particular type of nature. So some of what we have within our character is fitratan. It's already placed there by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then other aspects of our character, we say it's iktisabi, it's acquired. Okay? So as for the fitrah, it's already there. Now, for that we want to acquire, we want to develop. So how do we do that, or how is that done? So exercise, just like anything, exercise, practice, forcing the nafs self to perform actions that produce desired character. And we're going to talk about this, inshallah, in more detail. For example, generosity. So, man by default, or his nature, he's kind of bakhil by nature because, it's a kind of a survival thing. Because I think I have to survive, I'm going to need food, I'm going to need sustenance, I'm going to need to pay my rent, etc. So man is looking at his needs, and he thinks by keeping his wealth to him, so he'll be able to fulfill those needs, and so that kind of tends to make him, hoard and be miserly. So what we have to do is we have to concentrate, we have to focus, on acting generously. And there's going to be something intellectual, that we're going to have to actually do also, thinking about that. Understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to fulfill our needs, but we need to, at the same time, there needs to be balance, you see. So if we're out of balance or generosity, we need to practice it. We need to, force our nafs, against, that love of wealth and that love of having things in possessions, which is, everybody has it to some extent. Take for example, humility. So man can be, he tends to be arrogant. So if we find arrogant streak in ourselves, so we have to consciously try and humble ourselves. So there's a practice, there's exercise that we do for these things. So all good characteristics, we have to keep practicing, and consciously making an effort, as Brother Ubaid said, mindfulness. That's a term that's used now, but actually this is something that is very, very, traditionally Islamic. A tawajjuh, and focusing on these characteristics, focusing on ourselves, being mindful of ourselves. This is a very, elementary, principle, in Islam character building, in suluk. Okay. So we probably heard this. You probably heard this. This saying, "Fake it until you make it." So it's kind of a cute, way of saying it in English, but actually, this has its roots in Sunnah. And our ulama say, that if you cannot, for example, when you're reading the Holy Quran, we should be, have the kalam. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's kalam, so we should be affected so much so that begin to tremble. إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Their hearts, get affected. So if we don't find that effect naturally taking place, then what do? Fake it till you make it, إِلَّمْ تَبْكِي فَتَتَبَاكَى, they say, If you can't find yourself to cry and weep, out of fear of Allah and love of Allah and so forth, so at least make an action like that, with takalluf, as they say. So, just force yourself to do that, even if it's like kind of acting, but ultimately it will become a character habit. If we keep practicing, ultimately it becomes a habit. Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, who the basis of this part of our dars, it's basically khulasat of Ihya Ulumuddin, and what he talks about character building. And so he himself says, "Ta'allamna li ghayri Allah, thumma aba Allah illa an yakuna lahu." So he basically says that we started off in ta'aleem, for other than Allah. Maybe our parents put us there for the sake of the world or fame, name, or whatever the case. But then ultimately, as we progressed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by his fadl and by his tawfiq, he decided that ultimately it would become for him. So the development of character, the development of ikhlas, the development of spirituality, was taking place even in someone of that illustrious position, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, whom we call Hujjatul Islam. So, everybody starts off, we have to kind of fake it until we make it, myself included. So we're all in the same boat. Some of us boarded earlier, some later, but we're all traveling on the same journey in the same boat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us to our destination. Say Ameen. Ameen. Okay, like a person who wants to be a writer, what do? You practice. You know, people were born writers. You know, you have to practice it. You know, and you have to show your writing to critics and let them tweak you and so forth and so on. So that's what we have to do, to practice it. And also, it doesn't happen in a day. We don't build beautiful character, just by hearing, a lecture or watching a PP presentation. It takes time. It happens with consistency. Okay. However, don't discount a small amount of virtue or vice. So a little practice, maybe even 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day that we put in on this, it's going to have its impact if we are consistent with it. And similarly, don't discount a little bit of vice. A little bit of sin, a little bit of vice, it can destroy, years of building, of character building. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save me and all of us, inshallah. So always be mindful, as you've said, be mindful of, any good deed that we're doing, or, the ill effects of any vice. And so small consistent acts of obedience, practicing virtuous traits, produce results, inshallah ta'ala. Just as laziness becomes a habit, you get a little bit lazy, then the next day more lazy, and it becomes a habit, and it becomes difficult, to treat. And number 2, or B, companionship with the virtues. If you want to acquire a trait, then find people who have that, or someone who has that, and be with them and observe that, absorb it, And this is how Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum became Sahaba, by absorbing, being in the company of Rasul alayhi salatu. And that one moment of the company of Rasul alayhi salatu was so powerful, and it had such an impact that you became a Sahaba or Sahabiya, and now nobody who comes after you can reach that station, simply from the barakat of your one moment in the presence of Rasul alayhi salatu as a Muslim, and they say conditionally that you die in that state. So, Allahu Akbar. So, suhba, having good companionship. So a person is on the deen of his close companion, which also means he's on the character of his close companion. He's going to imitate, he's going to absorb, that characteristic. So look carefully as to whom you take as a close friend, and this is what a hadith actually of Rasulullah says: "Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi falyandur ahadukum man yukhalil." Rawahu Ahmad al-Tirmidhi wa ghayruhu aydan. Okay, so what is the path for refining character? Okay, now the how. We were looking at the what, and now the how. How do we do that? So a little tamheed, as they say, a little prelude to that. So number 1, balance of the nafs is health. If we have balance in our nafs, if we have balance with ourselves in these qualities, then that's called health. And imbalance is called disease. So health is balance, and imbalance is disease. Okay? So it's just like, treating a body. Now in traditional, Islamic, medicine, and this is true in traditional, medical, disciplines that now conventional medicine doesn't really pay much attention to, but it's coming back to the fore, and people are getting back into it. But it was all about balance. In our what we call the hukama, our traditional Muslim, atibba and hukama, doctors. So they used to look at they had the arba akhlaq, these 4, these 4 different types of elements that you have in the body, and there would be heat and cold and acidity and its opposite, and so they would look to balance these: the heat with the cold, the acidity with the alkalinity, if you will, bile and balgham, and balancing of all of these things, you see. So treating a disease, they used to actually, go into a balancing act, and they would look to acquire balance in the body, and then the body, once it acquires balance, then it acquires health. So the nafs is the same way. So just as the body is not created perfect, it requires rearing and proper nourishment, proper treatment. So the nafs is also created deficient, naqisa, But it has the propensity for perfection. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have created man in the best of character, in the best of shape, or in the best of taqweem. He's engineered in the best way, which that engineering gives him the propensity to accept proper ta'aleem and tarbiyah and become, ashraf al-makhluqat, to be the best of the creation. But if he doesn't work on that, he becomes asfal al-safilin, because those animalistic characteristics take over, and as we said earlier, those characteristics, those qualities begin to define us and control us. And that's what animals do. They are controlled and defined by their instincts. We are supposed to control our instincts and not be controlled by them. So nafs is like that. It is deficient, but with proper tarbiyah, with proper ta'aleem, with proper exercise and effort, it has the propensity, it has the ability to be perfected. Subhanallah. And that's what suluk is all about, the perfection of the nafs, so that it can actually reflect the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and an immersion in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's obedience. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all that. So it requires tazkiyah, purification, training. It requires tahdib al-akhlaq, refinement of character, cognizant, refinement of character, and obviously knowledge, the proper knowledge of how to do that. So for a healthy body, the doctor seeks to retain the health. Okay? And for a diseased body, he seeks to restore it. So if we have good character, we have to retain it. That's also an effort. And if we have a diseased akhlaq, and we have to restore it. We have to repair it. Okay. So similar is the nafs, like the body. Okay. So everything's clear up to now. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so diseases, we also mentioned the disease in the body is treated by its opposite. Now, probably conventional medicine wouldn't tell you that, but our traditional medicine, whether it's hikmah, or whether it's different types of tib, even the Chinese traditional medicine, the Indian traditional medicine, so all of the traditional medicines which actually went, we're looking at sources of disease, not just symptomatic treatment, but sources of disease. They all pretty much have this concept that we need to treat by bringing about a balance which treats a disease by its opposite. Some disease which produces heat, we need to treat it with cold, and so forth and so on. So disease of excess heat is treated with cold, and vice versa, as we mentioned. Similarly, contemptible character, disease of the heart, is also treated with opposites. So this is now we're getting into the how. Okay, so what do we do? For example, someone is ignorant. So obviously what do? The opposite of ignorance is knowledge. So we have to acquire knowledge. So miserliness, bukhl, its opposite is generosity. So if we have this trait of miserliness, so we're going to have to really force ourselves to, exercise generosity, spending, forcibly, carry our nafs, to comply with that. Okay? Arrogance. We find ourselves, arrogant. So we have to treat that with acts of humility. I might have mentioned this earlier, like some of my own mashayikh and my own asatid that I've seen, they would get up in the middle of the night and go and clean the bathrooms, the toilets. Just really, I'm not above this thing. I'm just a lowly human being created from the dirt, and I'm going back to the dirt. So to acquire humility. So, and previously, mashayikh, they used to, put their students and their murideen, through quite strenuous, mujahada to bring about these things. Now people can't really they can't really do that anymore. They don't have the ability to do that. But that's, sometimes sometimes surgery, it looks pretty bloody and pretty, pretty, gory, but actually the end result is, life. It's health. So sometimes we actually need that, However, hopefully we won't need to get into such gory practices. So, in other words, whatever despicable or ugly habit, we have to treat it with its opposite, and we have to conscientiously kind of force the nafs, to practice that until it becomes a habit. Gluttony, eat too much, drink too much, sleep too much, talk too much, and all of those things are pretty much connected together, and it's pretty much, if we eat too much, we talk too much, we sleep too much, and we spend too much time also ridding ourselves of the toxins. So if we control, the amount of intake of food with balance again, so a lot of these issues can be controlled, or more easily controlled. Okay, so gluttony, we have to consciously sort of force our nafs to control ourselves. We have to learn how to do that, inshallah. Okay, now here's some pointers here. One must tolerate the bitterness of the medicine and abstinence from the desires of the nafs that negatively affect the treatment in disease of the body. So, just like in treatment of the body, so you're going to have to tolerate the bitterness of the medicine. Some of that medicine is pretty nasty, tasting. And also, they're going to tell you, don't eat this, don't do this, So you're going to have to abstain from those desires that the nafs have that would otherwise negatively impact our health, and it will mess up the treatment. Okay? So this is going to require tolerance, forbearance, and sabr. So this is true in the disease of the body. This is also true in the disease of the heart. So similarly is the case in the disease of the heart. They are treated by mujahada, struggle, sabr, patience, tolerance, treatment. So it's not going to be easy. It's not like we're going to hear a sermon, we're going to see a PowerPoint presentation, we can take a pill, and it's going to happen. It's going to be a long, tedious process, but a wonderful and loving and beautiful experience, inshallah. Because when we start seeing, inshallah, by the tawfiq of Allah, our character changing and moving, towards, positivity, what Allah subhanahu likes, it'll give us, beautiful feeling that we wouldn't experience anywhere else, in anything else. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all. Okay? So, distress of the disease of the body ends in death. Now just keep this in mind, People are really afraid of death, and therefore they're ready to go through really, really severe treatments, to save them, as they think, from death, even though death is coming at its appointed time, la mahala, no way out of it. But, people are ready to go through anything, to try and get, physical health and save themselves from the musibah of death. But, in any case, distress of disease of the body is going to end at death. Maximum that can happen to you, you die. That's the end of it, right? However, distress of the disease of the heart never ends. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. If we leave this world with a diseased heart, there's no way that we'll be able to get that corrected after death. So the distress that would cause, it would be eternal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. So we have to keep that in front of us all the time. So what we're, if we understand the virtue and the value of what we aspire for, then it becomes easy for us to spend a lot, and undergo the difficulties that it requires. So just keep in mind, that, we know that we're ready to undergo hardships for the sake of physical health. So for the sake of eternal health and eternal bliss, we need to be really kind of, roll up our sleeves, as they say, natashammar, and prepare, to go through this, this exercise and this struggle, mujahada and sabr, so that we can ensure, our success in the hereafter. So treatment of the nafs requires diagnosis also. We have to know what is the problem, what is our illness, okay? So it requires diagnosis of its character and disease. So again, everybody is different. So no one size fits all, So we read in the book, we read in the book that, if you do this, you get this, and so everybody and we don't get that result, because everybody's different, and everybody's disease is different, everybody's mizaj is different, their nature and what they would need for treatment is it's all has to be customized to some extent. My sheikh in Medina, so he gave one talk one time, and everybody in that talk just started crying and just started making toba and all that. And so one of the fellows who was there in that gathering, so he went back to Riyadh and he gathered his friends and he wrote down, that talk word for word, and he memorized it verbatim, right? So he gathered his friends and he gave this talk, and they all got angry and got up and left, walked out. So I said, what's this? It's the same speech Sheikh gave and the same words, and everybody was crying and affected and just, really loved it. So then he went back to Medina at some point and told Sheikh, this is what happened. Sheikh said, who are the people that you gathered? He said, these are all very influential, wealthy people of high. He said, that's why. I told all about the virtues of faqr, of poverty, and and being the underdog, and obviously those people don't want to hear that. They would rather hear what's the virtue of spending. So we have to understand, what is our position, who are we, what we require, what's our disease, and what's the treatment. So one ignorant of Sharia, for example, needs to be taught. One with arrogance needs to be treated, something that'll, bring about humility. Somebody's got uncontrollable anger, so they need to be taught forbearance. So first we'll have to diagnose that. So most essential element for the patient is strength of determination, azm. على قدر أهل العزيمة تأتي العزائم. The Arabic saying that to the extent of the people of determination, to the big things happen. Some of the things are going to happen with that. So we have to, and people say, how do we get determination? How do we get azm? Just do it. How do we get it?
Just do it.
Do it. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wasta'inu bis sabri was salat, So make 2 rakats. Ask Allah, oh Allah, I don't have determination. Give it to me, please. And we have to struggle for that. So, roll up our sleeves and get ready for mujahid. We're going to have to struggle for it, One who wavers is unlikely to succeed. Trust in Allah and also trust in yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you ability to do this. And He'll continue to give us tawfiq. So have a positive outlook also, Don't waver, no, I can't do it, this is going to be too tough. No, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, we'll do it, inshallah. Who feels weakening in his determination, that happens, We're going very well, and then, something happens, foot slips, shaitan gets, overpowers us, nafs gets the upper hand. Okay, fine. Get up again. And this is the way life is. This is the struggle of life. لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد. يكابد مشقة الحياة. This is the way it is. We're going to continuously struggle. يوم لك ويوم عليك. A day, it's going great for you. Another day, it's going against you. But you keep on going, keep on persevering. Inshallah, like you see in the stock market. The thing goes up and down, but it has an upward trend. So that's what we want to see, an upward trend. It's going to go up and down, but inshallah, an upward trend. May Allah give us all tawfiq. So if there is a loss of determination, we can even do this, if anybody's, really wants to, push himself along, punish your nafs. And somebody was walking along and he said, who built that? Whose house is that? Then he thought, what do I care? What does it matter to me who built that house and who uses that house? Oh, you nafs, see what you're trying to do to me? So nafs, I'm going to punish you by 1 year of fasting. So our Aslaf, they really, took this stuff seriously. They really understood the value of bringing their nafs under control. May Allah give us something like it. So probably that's pretty extreme for most of us. But to some extent we can try and, come up with some strategy to punish our nafs in a way that we could perhaps bear that, and take us, it's not, we don't want to break our nafs, we want to tame our nafs, okay? As we always say also, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Slow and steady wins the race. So, I think we've got more that I prepared, but we've actually utilized our time. So I think we better keep it at that and keep it digestible and keep it palatable. So before we wind up, any questions? Any comments? We might have something online also, somebody might have something. It's all pretty clear? We're all ready for this? inshallah. And one thing, all of us who are sitting here, this is not easy. Ma tawfiq illa bil- ma- ma tawfiq illa billah. So we have to actually ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us, and we should also make dua for one another. Allah, all of us who are engaged in this process, Allah help them. And you know what? When you make dua for your brother or sister who's not present, then an angel is standing by and saying, Ameen, Ameen, walakum fi dhalik. And they're making dua that you should get as the same thing you're making dua for the other people, right? Okay, so we have any questions, any comments? Nothing online as well? It's amazing. So it means either we understood everything perfectly or we may not have. So, Jazakumullah khair. So if there is also questions, and obviously people asked about, by the way, I wanted to clarify one thing about the slides, okay? So it's basically my policy that I don't, send out slides. But you have, the recording of this. It's on Facebook, it's on Zoom, it's on various media. So see it again and again, And even if we do give people slides, you know what happens? It just sits in somebody's, USB or in his hard drive somewhere, and generally they don't even, they don't really even use it. So we're not going to distribute the slides, but it's up there. So see it again, 2-3 times. And when you want something, and you want to learn something, you have to repeat that. So I would suggest actually to see the presentation a few times. Some questions may come up in the interim, and so next week, inshallah, we can address those, inshallah. Yeah.
Brother Hamza Zanani just wanted to say Jazakallah khairan for supporting members through streaming online.
Well, barakallahu feekum wa iyaakum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you for thanking us and make dua for us, and jazakumullah khair. So, anything else? Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.